Welcome to the pre-seen discussion of SBL for the 2024 March examination. And as you should be well aware, the observed past examinations of SBL had taken industries which were quite unusual. Those are not the typical familiar industries. It's not FMCG. As you would have seen from the previous past papers and the mock papers, you would have encountered industries related to airlines, industries related to cloud service providers, and for your examination for the March 2024 paper, the industry is where we are running a professional football club. So most of you would be fans of football, but when it comes to working in football, very few of us would have been exposed to this particular context. The examiner understands that yes, of the SBL students, there would be full-time students who have never worked, and there would be many who have started their own businesses, and there would also be many working in corporates, but in typical sectors such as FMCG, in audit and other areas. That's why the industry selected are quite unusual, and the examiner understands this. For the sake of not having students at a disadvantage, the examiner has specifically stated, when it comes to SBL, the information provided by the examiner in the pre-seen as well as the post-seen in the exams would be more than sufficient. That's why the examiner explicitly has stated that students should not bring about information from outside the case. Some of you would have had personal experience on these industries, on such companies. Those are good for you to understand what's given in the SBL pre-seen, but you should not bring those facts which were not detailed, which were not provided in the case study to the examination. The examiner has made it forbidden. You should not bring facts outside the case. So that's one important notification. The second thing is where, see, the purpose of SBL is so that we can test students' commercial acumen. We can, in simple terms, this is for students to know that working in a corporate is not all about theory, but here it's to what extent you can apply rationally whatever you had learned. That's why SBL is quite different from the other modules. They look at how practical your response is. So in the examination, you are given tasks, and for the relevant task, they have respective exhibits. So your answers for the task should be based on the exhibits. Exhibits will have the relevant content you need, either to analyze, either to identify problems, either to advise, recommend, or critically evaluate. Can happen. So what's the purpose of pre-seen? A 10 to 12 page pre-seen is provided by the examiner because in reality, a problem faced by two different companies, even if it's the same problem, depending on the situation of the two companies, your response would be different. In simple terms, for example, let's say a common problem, decline in profit or decline in revenue, experienced by company A and company B. The causes are also quite similar. The causes could be, for example, diseconomies of scale, or else inefficiencies in the organization, or else something like the supplier has increased the prices he has charged from us. So the cost of production would have increased, causing the profit to decline in company A and company B. All right, similar situation, similar or the same problem. But keep in mind, company A is the market leader, company B is a market follower. Your response would be different. Company A is in an industry which is growing, company B is in an industry which is declining. Your response would be different. So when providing a response. When responding to a particular situation, we need to understand the business environment, both the internal environment and the external environment. So understanding the company's background, understanding the industry situation, as well as any other micro and macro environmental situation is of paramount importance, which is provided in the pre-seen. So to respond to your tasks, the relevant facts are provided in the exhibits in the exams. But you need to have an understanding of what our current situation is in respect of what's happening in the company, what's happening in the industry, what about our competitors, the markets, and any other relevant information. All right. So in pre-seen, the examiner wants you to understand the context you are placed in. After you understand the context, the industry, the environment, then in the final exam, when you go to the exam, you have relevant exhibits for which you have tasks to answer. So your tasks are based on your exhibits, but you should put yourself by understanding the environment of the industry which is provided in the pre-seen. So that's the purpose of the pre-seen, right? So in terms, some would say pre-seen is not important. Yes, it's not really important, because whatever you want to answer in the exam, the tasks, the content or the information you should consider comes from the exhibit, but you can't completely ignore the pre-seen, because see, as I said before, same problem by different companies would make you respond differently because of the different environmental situation. So pre-seen is not critically important, but you can't ignore it. If you ignore the pre-seen, your response might not be practical. So you should have an understanding of what's happening with the company. So for that, we need to have a proper picture of the pre-seen. So I would recommend you to understand the pre-seen and create a mind map so that you can feel what's happening with the company and its environment. So let's have a look at the pre-seen and the important content that's provided for your examination. Right. So our company is basically a club, which is the Athletic Transcentral Football Club. Herein would be referred to as AT. And we are a prominent football club in the football league of the country. It's owned by Athletic Transcentral Company, whose sole objective is running the football club. So the club is owned by Athletic Transcentral Company, AT Company. See, it's a company. It's not a sole proprietor, it's not a partnership, it's either a private or a public company. So far we do not know, but later on you would know that we have not listed in the stock exchange, so it should be a private company, private limited company. So Athletic Transcentral Company was incorporated with the sole objective of operating the football club. So they don't have any other divisions. They have only one division, that is football club. They have not engaged in any other activities, operations. So they are from the country of Clicombe, that's the country, in the continent of Wokia. So you would be encountering Clicombe and Wokia throughout the discussion. So Clicombe is the country AT is located in, and Wokia is the continent AT belongs to. And with regards to what has happened in the past, they have had its successes in the past, but in the recent years they have been struggling. Now let's have a quick look at the football sector. If you look at the football sector, when it comes to the sport of football, we have men's teams, women's teams, as well as under 18 teams, which is typically referred to as the children's teams. And in terms of the purpose of football clubs in general, we can classify those as professional clubs who operate football clubs for the purpose of running it as a profession. So profession is where the players are pursuing football as their full-time career. And we have recreational clubs. Our focus in this case is from the perspective of a professional club, because we AT are a professional football club. If you look at The professional clubs in Thailand, AT and its competitors who run football as professional clubs, they have many segments. They have the men's team and the women's team and the under 18 team. So the men's team and the women's team have their first team and the second team. The first team is the main team. They have the best players. They are the ones who are put for major football competitions. The second team is called the reserve team. The main purpose is basically to cultivate suitable football players who might be promoted to play for the first team. And then you have under 18 team, which does not have such classifications. Each team will be provided their own manager, coaching staff and support staff, which says that they provide individual attention for each of the team's operations. And now we'll be looking at professional clubs and academies. Out of all of these professional clubs, only 5 clubs have their own academies. So what do these academies do? They nurture football or potential football players from a very young age, recruiting potential players from the age of 9. So we can see out of all the clubs, only 5 clubs have their own academies where they nurture potential football stars from the age of 9. So these academies have an advantage over other clubs. The other clubs, they have the youngest aged football player who belongs to the under 18 team. But here in academies, they nurture football stars from a very young age. So these stars, these players from academies have a longer training time, longer professional guidance time, which is reasonable to be estimated that they are producing far more better football players than the other clubs which do not have academies. Academies, okay. So that's the benefit between having an academy and not having an academy, and only 5 clubs have these academies. And when it comes to any men's teams, the major team is the first team, which is their main phase. So most of the focus of clubs are placed on the first team. And how do clubs obtain players from the first team? Either they are promoted from the second team to the first team, or else football clubs keep on buying players from other clubs. So it's in simple terms, you call that transferring. Okay, so either we transfer from other clubs by paying a purchase price. It's not like we get ownership. It's like purchasing a contract, or else we can promote from the same club. And what drives profit? Though you see, football clubs have a large amount of income sources, which we'll be looking at later, but their major focus is to show that they are performing. So performance-based profit is what they are focused on. So in terms of performance, AT and its competitors play in competitions within the country of Thailand in its football league, as well as in international competitions, especially in the Wokian International League, which is the continental competition. If you look at Thailand's football league, we'll look at the structure of the competitions. They have the men's first team, where there are 3 divisions. We have division 1, 2 and 3. Division 1 is the top division, and then comes the second division, and then the lower division, which is the third division. Each division has 18 teams, so there are 3 divisions, a total of 54 teams. And each league season runs from August to May, which is for a period of 10 months. And in terms of the Thailand Football League, we call it KFL. Each team will have to compete with each other team twice, one in its home stadium and one in its away stadium. Home stadium refers to the club's home grounds, and away stadium refers to an outside stadium, typically the stadium of the opponent. So if you take a team in any of these divisions, let's say division 1, There are 18 teams. So if you take one of the teams, they have 17 competitors, 34 matches, 17 in home, 17 away. And in terms of points, whenever they win a match, they get 3 marks, draws 1 point, and losses 0 points. And there are 2 instances where a team can be relegated to the lower division, from Division 1 to Division 2. Division 2 to Division 3, they get demoted due to 2 reasons. One is on performance. Each division has 18 teams. So the lowest 2 performing team, that is ranked 17th and 18th in Division 1, will be demoted to Division 2. And the top 2 performing teams in Division 2, as number 1 and 2 in Division 2, will be promoted to Division 1. Same thing happens between Division 2 and Division 3. In Division 2, clubs ranking 17 and 18 at the end of the season will be moved to Division 3, and the number 1 and number 2 in Division 3 will be promoted to Division 2. On top of that, when a club has serious breaches on KFL regulations, they would also be relegated. Now, what are the incentives? See, football clubs are also organizations. They have a common cause and they have a collective agreement. So, what are the incentives for teams for performing? The winner of the division, either Division 1, Division 2 or Division 3, the winner gets a trophy. On top of that, they get a prize money, which is a sufficient incentive. On top of that, whenever a team is promoted to the upper division, from Division 3 to Division 2, Division 2 to Division 1, they become more popular, attracting more sponsorship. And the higher the division, the more popular it is amongst its fan base. So those television channels which broadcast the football would also pay a relatively higher pay for the clubs. So clubs, while being promoted from the lower division to the higher division, will earn more income from TV as well as increased sponsorships. And the first team is the number 1 team rather than the second team. So they are popular globally. So they have fans not only in the country of Thailand, not only in the continent of Walkia, but also global. So they have global supporters, which says that we might have global audience. That shows that relative to second team, how big the fans of first team is. In terms of TV subscribers for the TV channels, we might have a larger audience. So the clubs would be earning more. If you look at competitions, we have the domestic cup format, which is based on a knockout format. Teams are matched, clubs are matched randomly, and it's based on knockout. The winner goes up, the loser drops out. And in international matches, the top 3 teams in Division 1 will be selected to play for the continental competition. Not Division 2, not Division 3. The top 3 teams of Division 1 in the country of Thailand, so the country's top 3 teams, which is the Division 1's top 3 teams, will be selected for the Walkian International League. Let's call it WIL, W-I-L. So from Thailand, we have the top 3 teams from Division 1, and since it's a continental competition, there will be many countries. So other countries' successful teams, along with Thailand's top 3 teams in Division 1, will be playing in the Walkian International League at a larger arena. And here, since they are playing in a larger arena, they will also have more revenue from the international matches broadcast on TV, as well as more revenue from having more home games. Now let's look at the women's segment. So far, the main focus is on the men's segment. We discussed a lot. In women's segment, when it comes to AT, they are also having their own women's segment. How is the competition structure? They are also having the football league, the Thailand Women's Football League. Let's call it KWFL. They have 2 divisions. Men's have 3 divisions, women's have 2 divisions. But the constitution is the same, 18 teams in each division. And they also play in domestic cup competition. And also they have their first team, second team, and under 18 team. If you look at the industry body, KFL, Thailand Football League, is governed by Thailand Football Association. So the governing body of the domestic league is the Thailand Football Association. Since they have used the term Thailand, it represents the nation. So they have a Nations Football Association which governs KFL. So what are the roles of KFA, Highland Football Association, KFA? Their roles involve enforcing regulations, including financial fair play regulations, and also they recommend clubs to follow corporate governance best practices. And you should be aware of what corporate governance is. Corporate governance refers to non-mandatory, non-legal practices. Not non-legal, I would say non-mandatory practices. If we do not practice, that doesn't mean there's necessarily a legal breach. But they have recommended, telling that they are emphasizing the importance of having commonly accepted best practices so that clubs are properly run. KFA's regulations must comply with Waukegan and World Football's governing body. This also says us the association, KFA, cannot implement whatever policies they want. The policies they implement, the rules they bring should be in accordance, in line with the Waukegan and World Football governing bodies. Club's income and expenses. If we look at a professional club, there are many sources of income, including prize money. They get prize money based on the rank at the end of the season, and as well, for every match they win, they get prize money. So they win prize money based on their final rank, win money based on every competition they win. And when it comes to ticket sales, tickets are sold for two segments. One is audiences, fans, if they want to visit a football competition, they can buy tickets for individual matches, where they buy a ticket for a specific match. Or else they can buy season tickets. In simple terms, season tickets is where they buy a ticket which can be used to watch multiple competitions in the same tournament, but at a specific stadium. So you can't watch all the competitions, you can watch only competitions of that tournament in a specific stadium. That's season tickets. And on the day of the match, there will be match day incomes. On the day of the match, the clubs that basically own the stadium can basically have their own sale of refreshments. And also when it comes to watching football, there is also boxes where rather than sitting with the public, they can also watch the football competition via a box. So typically there will be corporate clients who want a more comfortable view and a better view. They might book these boxes, or there can be friends who can afford this, they might also use these boxes. And in terms of transfer fee, these are also another source of income, but this is not very frequent, but this happens. It's a normal equation, where once we cultivate a player and once the player is more recognized, the value of the player increases. So the club can also transfer this player to other clubs, basically sell the contract and earn money. When we look at the other additional income, clubs can earn income from advertising and commercial sponsorship. Sponsors will pay the club for sponsoring opportunities. They can advertise around, some sponsors advertise around club stadiums. Some sponsors will pay to brand their company's brand on the player t-shirts. Some would use the club's brand or even the player's brand in their marketing campaigns. And some clubs would also sell their naming rights of the stadium to the sponsors. You would have encountered many stadiums which are named under someone else's name or a different company's name. So this is where the football club has their own stadium named under someone else, because they have sold the naming rights of the stadium to sponsors. And typically, normally these sponsorship contracts last for 2 to 5 years. But for naming right contracts, it's long. Obviously, you can't constantly keep on changing names. On top of earning from sponsorships, clubs can also earn from selling merchandise. The main merchandise are typically official replica shirts. Fans of football players would basically want to support and imitate their favorite football stars. which is an opportunity that is adopted by every football club, where they sell replica t-shirts of the player. But there's a threat that is unavoidable, that is the emergence of fake replica shirts or imitations by unauthorized retailers are widespread in the market. But there is only one silver lining, that is when it comes to imitations, they do not have the official marks that displays that it's a genuine product. So there is at least a visible difference between imitation as well as official replica shirts. And there are other merchandises as well that can be used to make sales. In terms of the sales channels used to sell merchandise, clubs have their own club shops, and they might also sell merchandise through other retail outlets in Thailand as well as in foreign countries. We discussed first teams and Division 1s would have audiences throughout the world. So why not sell merchandise throughout the world? So for this, they usually use retail outlets from in overseas countries as well. And also to penetrate the country of Thailand, they also use retail outlets within the country of Thailand. And on top of that, they use club website to make sales. So we also adapt e-commerce through the club's websites. If you look at an alternative source of income that can be earned by many clubs, that is, they would lend out the stadium to outsiders for any other additional events. For example, for other sports, for concerts, for conferences, they lend out the stadium to earn some additional income. So when the stadium is not in use, this is also another source of alternate income. And in terms of television, we had a discussion that televisions would broadcast the matches live on their channel. For this, they have to pay the Football Association. So the contract on the terms of broadcast and the terms of payment is negotiated between the television channel, and representatives of the Thailand Football League, because the league is organizing the competition. So on behalf of all the players, the Thailand Football League, which organizes the competition, negotiates with the television channel on the terms of the contract for broadcasting rights. And the clubs in KFL are bound by contract, and they would receive a portion of the income. So they would have an agreed amount of income each season, and depending on their appearance in the matches, the higher the appearance, the more the appearance, they get an additional income. So obviously you will have to keep on winning so that you can have multiple matches, more appearance, more income. And obviously when it comes to multiple divisions, Division 1, which is more popular, would obviously be getting a preferential treatment in terms of pay than Division 2 or Division 3. And certain clubs have their own TV channel, and for this, since they have their own TV channel, they will have their own income through subscription and advertising. So if you look at AT's latest annual revenue proportion has been displayed in the diagram. You can see the table where sponsorship they have earned 64, retail 52. So let's look at this in comparing the proportions. So sponsorship, retail, TV, match day, prize money. We discussed all 5 of these under the common clubs income categories. So coming back to this, so AT's recent revenue proportion is displayed in the diagram. As you can see, the categories of sponsorship, retail, TV, match day and prize money were discussed earlier. However, there is a small concern. The income from transfer fees were not part of this classification, because I cannot see a category that this belongs to. It's not sponsorship, it's not TV, it's not match day, it's not prize money. Retail is about selling merchandise. So transfer fee is not there. I'm not sure, we do not have sufficient information to determine whether is this due to a mistake, or is this due to an omission, or is this due to not having a transfer fee earning. So we have not sold players from the club to any outside clubs. We do not have sufficient information, but this is something that you can think of if you see any related information given in the final case. If you look at these 5 categories, 37% of the income comes from TV. The highest comes from TV broadcasting rights, and the lowest 10%, 10.23% comes from prize money. So if you look at what brings more money, one is TV. So see, for you to increase this earning capacity, obviously you should get more money from TV. How can they give you more money? One, the better you perform, clubs, we are in division 1, so it's obvious in division 1. So the better you perform, you will be able to have more and more matches. You will be able to gather large amount of fans, audiences that would have a correlation with your TV revenue. And the second category, second highest revenue category, comes equally from sponsorship and match day. Sponsorship 18.71% and same as match day. Sponsors would also be willing to renew contracts for a higher money based on the club's performance, and if there are any stars in the clubs as well as their fan base. Same with match day. So if you look at on the day of the match, if our stadium can facilitate a larger audience, we will earn more money from tickets and sales of refreshments. The larger the audience, the larger the capacity of the stadium, will be able to earn more. This is under the condition the additional capacity in the stadium will be filled. For this, again, the club's performance, attraction to fans are basically achieved. And then comes retail, 15%. And obviously, customers buy merchandise based on their preference over the club. As long as the AT club performs well, ranks high, as well as preferably if they have some key star players, it's easy to have their retail merchandise sold. Just like now we have many fans of Cristiano Ronaldo and Messi. You know, wherever these star players are, they will have their own fans who buy their merchandise. Now let's look at the expenses. When it comes to expenses, we have some general expenses, employee salary and benefits, and also we have amortization costs. Amortization cost is basically when a club purchases a player. This purchased fee is capitalized and considered an asset, whose value is amortized over the contract period. For example, we signed off a player from an outside club for 5 years. So let's say the purchased fee was 20 million and we signed off a contract for 5 years. So the annual amortization is 4 million per year for 5 years, 20 million. Because they are specifically stated, the amortization is on a straight line basis over the contract period. And the club would also spend money on the stadium. They will have running costs as well as depreciation of property, plant and equipment. And on the match day costs, we discussed that they earn on the match day, earning through ticket sales, earning through refreshments, boxes, and also they have relevant expenses, catering expenses as well as security expenses to ensure that the players are protected. Typically, the service of club stewards and police are utilized. Club stewards in simple terms are fans who basically volunteer to work on the match day. But obviously we have to spend money on them, provide them relevant attires, refreshments and other related expenses. And obviously we can't just take free labor, right? It's not nice. So there are related expenses for these stewards as well. And clubs that have their own television, yes, we discussed earlier that they have their own subscription income and advertising income. On top of that, running a TV channel will also have related expenses. And finally, finance costs for any capital obtained by the company. Next, let's look at financial fair play regulations. What's this? Financial fair play regulations, FFPR. The aim of financial fair play regulations was to stop professional football clubs from spending more than they can earn. So this regulation was brought because they observed that football clubs, especially professional football clubs, obviously have to spend a lot of money to run, to operate and to grow. But the problem is many clubs were not able to earn as much as they spend, causing them to have many financial difficulties. So these FFPR, financial fair play regulations, were brought with the aim of stopping clubs in facing such a drastic situation. How do they do this? They look at the relevant earnings. Obviously, it's understandable that many clubs will not always have positive earnings at the end of the year. So FFPR has set up a mechanism where they would limit any professional club of having a negative $5 million net earning over a 3-year period. So during any 3 years, if the total cumulative net earning is a minus 5 million, that's the limit. If the negative earning is to be exceeding minus 5 million, that has exceeded the tolerance level, such clubs will be penalized under financial fair play regulations. There are many concerns. One is relevant income. One is in terms of how relevant earnings were computed. So this is a smaller specific concern. So if you look at the focus of the club, they focus on relevant earnings, which is relevant income minus relevant expenses. Income, expenses, earnings are profit. These are typically non-cash items. But the term relevant is a bit problematic. The term relevant is typically taken into relevant cash flows. So far you can take it as it is, but in case in the final exam, if there is clarity given whether is it relevant earnings or relevant cash flow. If it is relevant cash flow, the items considered in computing the relevant earnings are to be questioned, because in relevant income they have taken profit on disposal and profit on sales of players. So profit, not disposal proceeds, not how much we earn, but the profit. Relevant expenses, we have amortization, which is a non-cash item. Loss on disposal of tangible current assets, loss, non-cash item. Loss on sales of players. So profit and loss are not cash actually. So you'll have to look at the final exam to understand whether are they meaning income or earnings, or are they meaning relevant cash flows. So that is an area of ambiguity. And as I said before, FFPR has would get involved by penalizing clubs who have more than negative 5 million earnings over 3 years. So the cumulative 3-year earnings should not be below negative 5 million. If such a thing happens, the penalties for such breaches would include fines, would include loss of points. So points are basically the points provided when we win a match in the league. We discussed earlier, for every match we win, we get 3 points. Draw 1 point, losses 0 points. We will lose many points. And loss of prize money in the league, and unable to participate in the Kylan Domestic Cup or even the Continental, Walkie and International League competitions. So these are some serious penalties. These penalties are severely imposed because they want to ensure that clubs do not have such major liquidity issues. And finally, they can also be relegated to lower divisions if they have serious breaches. The examiner has also illustrated an example in the pre-seen that typically shows us. This is an example, this is not the actual situation. For example, if you look at year 4, 5, 6, cumulatively we have 1 million, 2 million and 4 million as the relevant earnings. So if you take these 3 years cumulatively, they have a minus 7 million cumulative earnings, which has breached the regulations. So if such a company faces this situation, this club will be penalized. So let's look at what happens to AT later on. So far, just a quick catch, AT is so far safe. Right, now let's look at media coverage. Division 1 has many games. We discussed Division 1, 2, 3 and 8 is in Division 1. When Division 1 is in play. It's broadcast live on TV, obviously, because they are the more popular divisions as well as they have global audiences. And it's also popularized in Kylan's newspapers and social media. And they have specifically stated that newspapers are more enthusiastic to obtain exclusive news on clubs and players. In the final exam, they might add, there's a possibility of adding related content, because see, in reality, celebrities are also suffering from newspaper paparazzis. You know, to get exclusive news, sometimes the personal lives of players, clubs would also be, explored and revealed by newspapers. That will cause a hindrance to the players. And sometimes certain news can also affect the club's reputation and player reputation. So far we don't have such information given, but there could be a related exhibit in the exams. Next, industry challenges. So these are the challenges in the industry which are problem areas that can be identified in the final case. Men's Division 1, for them to be successful, they obviously need to perform. In terms of performance, first they need to perform well in Division 1 and get selected and perform in the Wokian International League. And earlier we discussed, the teams that are selected for the Wokian League are the top 3 teams in Division 1. And clubs obviously want to prove their performance. So all clubs in Division 1, the 18 clubs in Division 1 would do their best to be one of these top 3 teams. So for this, they have significant challenges. One is every club would want to have the best players, so they would be having massive expenditure on buying the best players who would demand high salary. So ensuring income is more than expense is difficult. See, every club is wanting the best player. They would spend more to buy players, but only 3 clubs would have the top 3 ranks. The others might not get the return for their expenses. Many leading clubs recently have declining operating profits, mainly due to higher costs related to players. They have not provided what are the higher costs related to players, but you could infer. As I said before, any outside information can be taken by you for you to understand, but do not explicitly mention those in the exams. If you look at this, obviously when obtaining popular players, key players, the club has to pay them a higher salary. On top of that, in practicality, many key players will also get their unique team with very preferential treatments. They might have the exclusive nutritionist. They might have their exclusive physio instructor, and they might have their exclusive coach and trainer, exclusive for individual players. And on top of that, facilities, nutrition, training, meals, they might have more and more expenses related to this, which is not specifically provided in case. So this is just for your understanding. Yes, maintaining popular players to ensure that they perform in their top condition would incur a lot of money and expenses. There are related risks and threats as well. Poor performance in Division 1 team, obviously even though a club is in Division 1, if they have poor performance, they will have lower match attendance. Who would want to watch matches which are not that interesting, except for loyal fans and nearby communities who are residing near the stadium? It would be very difficult for them to attract much crowd, much attention. Competitors for resources, another risk. There's high competition between a club and its other competitors for resources. These resources could be competition for players, competition for talented coaches, management staff, even sponsors, supporters and prize money. And there's a risk where commercial sponsors might not renew the contract. We discussed earlier, typical commercial sponsorship would go for 2 to 5 years. If our club performance has declined, and in this case 80 companies' performance has declined over the last 3 years, based on the Division 1 ranking, their ranking has declined over the last 3 years. So a declining club might have their sponsors switch from AT to some other club. There's a risk. Departure of players and staff to other clubs, loss of key players due to serious injuries. Football is a sport where it's prone to injuries. Many talented players have been, due to serious injuries, many would have a large amount of time where they were not fit for play, and some would have retired from their football career. And fall in income from TV contracts. There's a risk of football's appeal being reduced, as well as the situation of illegal live streaming affecting TV income. And there will be threats to income from sponsorships and other sports being popular than football, or else fans are diverting from football to other sports. And also entertainment events focus diverting from football to elsewhere. These are also threats to income in general. And there might also be alternative forms of corporate hospitality which affects the income. Alternative forms, rather than looking at cash flows, cash payments, they might be looking for other methods of treatment, causing us to be treated but not financially. We also had a look, there's a risk of penalties from breaching FFPR, the Financial Fair Play regulations we discussed earlier, as well as damage to club brands. Sometimes the club's players' misconduct would obviously harm the club brand. As we also discussed, newspapers are keen to explore new news. So the personal lives, personal incidences of players and club situations can also have a risk to club brand's reputation. Negative media coverage of players' personal lives, health and safety risks, security risks from supporters' poor behavior. We discussed that there is security risk. That's why clubs would obviously take the service of the police for security. But still there is risk. Risk cannot be 100% terminated. And financial risks. A club at the end of the day is an organization. So they would obviously be affected by interest rate changes. And since they are playing in the international arena, they might have exchange rate, they'll be affected by exchange rate changes, liquidity and solvency risks. Now, understanding that many of the students might not be completely aware of what's happening in the football industry, the examiner has also provided a list of major stakeholders. In terms of internal stakeholders, we have shareholders. Shareholders? In an organization, in a company, typically shareholders are taken as connected stakeholders. But see, the nature of football clubs are quite different. Football clubs are basically owned by a limited people, and they are actively engaging in the operations of the football club. They are the people who run the football club. Unlike a public company where the public are the shareholders, in a football club, a private company, the ownership is limited, and on top of that, the shareholders, the owners, are actively involved in running the club. So they are internal stakeholders in this context. Directors, players, team managers, coaching staff and other employees all come under internal stakeholders. If you look at connected and external stakeholders, so these are just for your understanding. We have supporters, retail customers who sell merchandise, TV broadcasters who live broadcast the football competitions, commercial sponsors, merchandise suppliers who sell our merchandise to us. So we basically have to produce the merchandise to sell, right? These are the suppliers. Police, emergency services, Kyle Football League and Kyle Football Association. All of these are connected to external stakeholders. Now comes this picture which shows the situation of AT in Division 1. As you can see, the position of AT in the Division 1 league has been given for the last 3 years. Keep in mind there are only 8 teams given. Division 1 has 18 teams and they have given only the top 8 teams, as you can see from the rank 1 to 8. So Kyleland has been ranked number 5 in 2000-2001. Kyleland has been ranked 6 in 2002 and ranked 8 in 2003. So you can see that Kyle Lund's ranking has been declining for the past 3 years, ranked 5th, 6th, and then recently ranked 8th. So their performance has been declining, but still they are in the top 8 amongst the 18 teams in Division 1. So they are not having the worst performance. No. They are in the top 8, but their performance has been declining. Sponsors might be willing to replace us with some others. Right. Opposite to us, Union Carrigas was ranked 8th 3 years ago, 7 and 5 recently. They have improved performance, but Kylan performance has been declining. This is one thing you need to be aware. Kylan doesn't have the worst performance, but their performance has been declining gradually, but still they are in the top 8. Next, let's look at the stadium capacity. 38,000. AT has 38,000 stadium capacity, which is the lowest stadium capacity amongst the top 8. The highest stadium capacity is by number 1, Maritime Montimo, which has a 73,000 stadium capacity, almost double the size of AT. So if AT is able to renew, refurbish and expand the capacity of the stadium, they would be able to earn more. Tickets, boxes, sponsors, yes. And on top of that, the final revenue is only $342 million, which is the lowest amongst the 8. Obviously, since the ranking is low, their income also should be relatively low. So this revenue is excluding player trading. So these are the revenue from matches, prizes, sponsorship, merchandise. So here, based on this, we look at two important facts. AT has the lowest stadium capacity, which affects the revenue, and the rank, the performance, has been declining over the past 3 years. Innovation and sustainability, tendency to use digital media is more. Yes, they are going more into the digital space, digital platform, which is something common. This could enhance income and interest. And clubs in general are using their own website and social media platforms, where they use it to post updates, news about the club, about the players, as well as any news of interest to supporters. So see, you can know that supporters, when you put them in the Mendelow's matrix, they have high interest and low power. So we have to keep them informed. And having their own official website and social media platforms to keep them updated is a very systematic and an approach that is utilized by clubs. And if you look at the top 4 teams in Division 1, we have 18 teams in Division 1. The top 4 teams in Division 1 in 2002-2003, that is Maritime, 1922 Leuven, Orient, as well as Spring, the top 4 teams in Division 1. They have their own TV channels where supporters pay a subscription, and these TV channels are available on club's website and other popular platforms. Remember, we had discussed in Division 1, even though there are 18 clubs, there are differences. There are only 5 clubs with academies, and 4 clubs, the top 4 clubs have their own TV channels. So in terms of revenue, in terms of potential training and potential of football players, there is differences. Next, let's look at KPIs. My goodness, students, you need to be aware of what KPIs are. See, a company, even a club is a company, a club is an organization, and it's a company here, it's AT company. Any organization has its corporate objectives. To achieve corporate objectives, there are many significant factors that have a direct impact, which we call critical success factors. Critical success factors are achieved by achieving the KPIs, key performance indicators. So here, clubs would have many financial and non-financial key performance indicators. If you look at financial indicators, we have revenue, we have player salaries, EBITDA, earnings before interest, tax, depreciation, amortization, relevant earnings for FFPR. Obviously, if relevant earnings are greater than minus 5 million cumulative for 3 years, then we have penalties, big issue. And cash flows, player sales and purchase, and capital expenses. In terms of non-financial KPIs, league position of men's first team and other teams, average match attendance as per a percentage of stadium capacity, number of season ticket holders, club website hits, and compliance with applicable regulations. So you can just have these in mind because you can understand that these are areas that are of importance. If there is any information that is affecting these, those are considerable risks that has to be addressed. Now let's look at a quick look at the overview of the company. AT was founded in 1895, which has a considerable history. Men's first team was started playing in 1907, and in terms of controlling interests, we have the Clicombe family, which has had a considerable stake for many years. And it's not listed in Clicombe Stock Exchange. So AT company is a company, it's not listed in the stock exchange. So we have reasonable, it's reasonable for us to consider this as a private limited company. Color code uniform is the white shirts with black sleeves, black shorts and socks. These will not be tested, not be informed, but it's okay to know this. And we also discussed when it comes to AT, they have the men's and women's division 1 and 2 as well as the under 18 teams. When you look at the men's division 1, they have been operating for 60 years in KFL. Throughout the last 6 decades, they have won the championship 6 times and won the domestic cup 5 times. Remember, KFL championship is where in one division, each club has 2 matches against the same team. But in the domestic club, it goes on a knockout basis. And there is strong supporter base. With its success, we had 11 competition wins, 6 KFL championships, 5 domestic cup championships. But the problem is, this was throughout the last 60 years. If you want to know the recent poor performance, for the last 15 years, no championship was won by KFL. And they have not even qualified for the Wokian League in the last 8 years. Remember, for us to qualify for the Wokian League, we need to be in the top 3 in the Division 1. For the last 8 years, we were not in the top 3. So we had information on the last 3 years, ranked 5, 6 and 8. So 5 years before that also, our ranking was below 3. Women's division was established 25 years ago in comparison to men's division. And women's division has been doing very well recently. Last year, they were ranked 3 in the KWFL, which is the highest performance, and they won the championship of the domestic cup. And the average attendance is 3,000. So out of the club stadium, they have only 3,000 average attendance, which is quite low. It's fine. We understand the men's clubs, men's competition in general have a higher audience than women's. Reserve and under 18 average attendance per game is less than 1,000. Next, let's look at the board structure. The board structure of AT is where, as you can see in the structure, we have the chair and 2 non-executive directors. So without the chair, there are 2 NEDs. With the chair, there are 3 non-executive directors. But there are 6 executive directors, including the CEO. So here we have a concern. Specifically, we discussed at the start, the Clicombe Football Association would recommend companies following or clubs following corporate governance protocols. And here one of the generally accepted corporate governance protocol is where it's on the board of director composition. NEDs without the chair should be equal or more than the executive directors. So if you take NEDs with the chair, it would obviously be more than NEDs with the chair, it will be obviously more than the executive directors. So NEDs with the chair should be the majority than the executive directors, which is not seen here. So this is a concern. If tested in the exam on corporate governance, this is one area you can point out. And CEO is a member of Clicombe family, that is not a problem. But if Clicombe family member becomes a non-executive director, then that becomes a problem because there is an issue of independence. CEO, it's not a problem so far. Each function does their own recruitment and appraising its own staff, which is very problematic. You might feel, okay, football director recruiting football players is fine. Some would say it's reasonable, but what about the rest? Finance director engaged in recruiting finance employees, marketing director recruiting marketing. Things are not under a common effort, not systematic. We need an HR, we need a centralized HR effort here. See, each function does their own recruitment and appraising its own staff. Are they experts in appraising their own staff? Yes, they might have the technical issue, but they are not the experts. So if there is any concern on recommendation, make sure you emphasize the importance of having an HR department which can obviously recruit, select, train, develop, and even manage the HR employees. And the company at present only has the audit committee. You know the audit committee, but they do not have a remuneration committee. They do not have a nomination committee. Risk committee's work can be also done by the audit committee to a certain extent, so it's fine. But you know, the non-existence of a remuneration committee to decide the package, the remuneration package of executive directors, the non-existence of nomination committee to nominate, to propose, to replace and to nominate the change in the director board is not there. So that is a thing to consider. If you find out concerns, issues in the organization centered on remuneration and nomination of directors, you can basically work on these two. So at the end of the day, it all depends on what's given in the post seen in the exam. If the exhibits identify problems in remuneration, exploitation of remuneration, directors are not doing their job well, so we need a nomination committee there and a remuneration committee as well. An audit committee has only 2 NEDs. Yes, without the chair, we only have 2 non-executive directors. Another reason is if we want to have other committees, if we want to have the audit committee and the remuneration and nomination committee. Even if you open up the other committees, we only have 2 NEDs without the chair. So we can't have the same non-executive directors in all of these committees, right? So what are the roles of audit committee? Coming back to this, reviewing financial statements, accounting and financial internal control systems. Now see, managing internal control systems is fine, but here they are specifically limited the internal controls to accounting and finance. What about the internal controls of the rest of the organization? That is not mentioned. They have narrowed down internal control management only to accounting and finance, which is not right. There's no parties mentioned here who would be involved in managing internal controls of other departments of the organization and liaising with external auditors. If you look at information systems, they have stated that information systems are adequate for its purposes. That's a very generic statement. You can, if there is no, as long as there is no problem stated in the exam related to systems, then we will have to accept this. If you find any incidences where there are problems in information system, this is an area where you can question the examiner. Database of season ticket holders and customers buying official replica kits online. For those sales online, sales of tickets, sales of merchandise, the company has collected the name, contact information should be things like their contact, address and stuff for delivery, as well as financial details have been collected. By financial details, I presume information like their card details. And AT has its own website, app, and also its long established social media platforms so that they can have its news and updates posted. Now let's come to the stadium. Earlier we discussed the stadium of AT had the lowest capacity of 38,000. Now let's look at what's happening with the stadium. The stadium of AT was built 90 years ago. It was built almost a century ago, 9 decades ago. The location is in the center of the city, a popular location, but the problem is no other Division 1 teams play in this city. So the utilization rate of the stadium throughout the year is questionable. The next thing is, yes, even though there are no other teams in the city, there are 3 Division 1 teams who are located within 40 kilometers of AT Stadium. But based on how they have presented, we can reasonably assume that they do not utilize our stadium. Average attendance of AT's KFL Division 1. Average attendance at AT's KFL Division 1 in the stadium is 96.5% in the last year, which is approximately 36,700 from 38,000. In general, a capacity utilization of 96.5% is considered full capacity, and Division 1 has an average 96.3%. So AT at present has their stadium utilized by 96.5% in their Division 1 KFL matches, which is really good. But keep in mind, yes, capacity utilization is good, but keep in mind, keep in mind our stadium capacity is the lowest amongst the top 8. And at present, since it is reasonably in full capacity, used in full capacity, 96.5%, investing in expanding the stadium can also attract more and more audiences because it's currently in full capacity. So when we expand the capacity of the stadium, it's likely that we can also attract more and more audiences, telling that investing in expanding the capacity is a feasible idea. Weaknesses and threats of the stadium: limited car parking facilities. If you want to expand the stadium, we have to address this when refurbishing the stadium. Traffic congestion in local area on match days. Streets nearby become crowded and noisy when supporters come in and out of the stadium, which has annoyed local residents. This is something very serious. The stadium is in the center of the city, and during match days, it's very congested, crowded, noisy, which has annoyed local residents. Rather than local residents being more enthusiastic, there is annoyance. So this is a risk in the long run. High stadium maintenance expenses since last 10 years. Obviously, stadium was set up 90 years ago. So with the passage of time, things would have deteriorated, depreciated, amortized. So in the last 10 years, the running expenses has been increasing. Okay. The main reason for high expenses is due to age, yes, we discussed, and strict health and safety requirements. So we have to see the feasibility, suitability of investing on refurbishing and expanding the stadium, because obviously the running cost of the stadium at present is very high, and the stadium is also in full capacity, and our stadium capacity is the lowest amongst the top 8. So why not we spend money, invest money, one big amount to refurbish the stadium while expanding the stadium. They can provide you additional information, a possibility. They can provide you information in the exam, in the exhibit related to this particular area, and ask you for your advice. Long queues for stadiums, refreshment outlets, facilities insufficient for holding other events. So earlier we discussed one of the income sources of clubs is they rent out the stadium for other events such as other sports, concerts, musicals, and AT stadium has problems because they do not have facilities needed for holding other events, which makes us not have this income source of earning through renting. Facilities, in terms of access facilities, served by a frequent bus service to the stadium, and there are 2 train stations nearby within 2 kilometers from the stadium. And in terms of the audience seats, there are 30 hospitality boxes for corporate clients. AT owns a shop at the premises of the stadium where they sell merchandise, and they also own the stadium land. So the land of the stadium is owned by them. And they have an interesting information here. The adjacent land to the stadium, the next land to the stadium is also owned by AT, but at present it is leased to Freenia City Council. Another possible information that can be given in the posting is related to this. We earlier discussed, you might be asked on, should we renovate the stadium? Should we expand the stadium to increase the audience sizes, to increase the capacity? And they have also specifically stated the land adjacent to the stadium is also owned by AT, but at present it is leased to Freenia City Council. We do not know when the lease will be over, and we do not know for what purpose is the City Council using that land. But if there is a possibility of recovering that land for AT's use, that can be used to expand the AT's operations. It can be used to expand the stadium capacity, or we can even bring out our training grounds next to the stadium. This can be used by AT. So we have to look at the cost and benefits of this, which will be given in the exam if it's tested. Training facilities at current, it's 14 kilometers away from the stadium, which was moved 3 decades ago. And it was upgraded 5 years ago and now regarded as one of the best in country of Thailand. It's regarded as one of the best in the country of Thailand. So if you want to comment on improving the training facilities, keep in mind we are regarded as one of the best training facilities in the country. So if you do not have sufficient justification, on recommending on improving training facilities, if you do not have any justification, please do not comment on that. Division 1 and 2 always uses this, but the under 18 division sometimes have to use other facilities nearby, which tells that our training facilities, which we consider as one of the top in the country, is currently in full use by our own division 1 and 2. So even our ATs under 18 might not have the opportunity to use the training facilities frequently. Commercial activities of AT, there are many sponsors but no lead sponsor as at present. In terms of sponsors, we have sponsorships cover AT's official kit, advertising within the stadium, use of AT's brand and player identities. In terms of sponsorship, AT has not sold naming rights to stadium or other facilities, which on a personal basis I also prefer it. At the long run, we should not have our stadium named under someone else unless we have some serious liquidity issues. AT sells of official replica kits directed to supporters, and these merchandise are produced by 3 suppliers. They produce the merchandise required by supporters, players and customers. There is a club shop owned by AT at its stadiums. They sell official replica kits and other limited ranges of clothing and accessories. And we also discussed that AT has its own website which they use to generate online sales. And they also license the production of official replica kit to other suppliers. We discussed, right? AT in Division 1 has audiences throughout the world. So they have retail outlets in Thailand and in other countries. So production of merchandise for other countries can be done through licensing, which they are currently doing. In terms of AT website extracts, mission and values, AT's mission is to maintain its position as one of the leading clubs in Thailand. So keep in mind here there is a small concern. AT's mission is to maintain its position as one of the leading clubs in Thailand. It's not leading football clubs. So their mission is to be one of the leading clubs in Thailand. So here I'm not sure whether they will relate this to your final exam. So based on the mission, their scope of focus is not only football. Okay. So this is a possibility. You have to just be careful whether is there any related information given in the final exam. In terms of the values, they have given the values here: transparency, safeguarding, community, players, conduct, stakeholders, environment. Pretty good the values, but in terms of safeguarding, they have only stated safeguarding the players. Yes, players are prone to injuries. We have to safeguard them. But in terms of the values of AT, they only focus on safeguarding players, not about the other staff. So that is a myopic, a narrow-minded area that is questionable. In terms of financial information, the financial year ends 31st of May, and FFPR's regulation, remember we discussed the -5 million or -5 million cumulative 3-year retained earnings. We are safe for now. No negative related earnings. However, the revenue has been increasing the last 3 years, but the EBITDA has been declining. So earnings are related to profit. So a profit has been declining even though revenue has been increasing. So this basically marks the end of what is given in the case. So the purpose of discussing this in depth as per the order of the pre-seen is so that you understand the journey of the case. So I want you to have a proper mind map about what's happening with the company, what's happening with the industry, what's happening with the environment, what are their challenges and its situation. So in terms of the exam, there are several areas of interest. At currently, these things might or might not be related to a final exam. I am just pointing these out. These are some interesting areas. In terms of problems, AT has a declining profit, EBITDA. Their revenue has been increasing, but their profit has been declining. And their performance also has been declining, as you can see, declining the ranks, and they have not won any championship over the last 15 years as well. And how to address the industry challenges. We discussed several industry challenges in terms of attracting, competing for players. They have to spend a lot on players, lot on salary, and other industry challenges, just pointed out. And they might ask you to assess, so these are things that can be assessed on corporate governance, board of director composition and structure, committees, at present only audit committee, and recruitment is done by the said department, there is no HR department. These are some areas of assessments. Should we open an academy? At present, academies are open only by a few clubs. So should we see one of the income sources is through nurturing football players and having them transferred or sold to, having their contracts sold to other players where they earn. So should we open an academy? There are many benefits of opening an academy. One is we can train players from a very young age, so we might have a better chance of having more and more talents. So we can sell them, earn money, and having better talents will have a more skilled first team, so we can improve our performance, which is one of the main purposes of any club, improve the performance, getting ranked, getting selected to the walk-in league, and winning. So higher performance, so we can earn sponsors, prize winners, reputation, and all of this. So opening an academy would drive these particular areas, but there are challenges. So see, we are running academies, recruiting children from over 9 years. So there are additional costs. We need more training space. The current training facility of AT is already utilized. So these are challenges. So they might ask you to assess this. Should we have our own TV channel? TV channels, they have not stated that AT has TV channels. They have only stated the top 4. The top 4 clubs has 8 TV channels. AT is in the ranked 8th. Having our own TV channel is an additional source of income, but there are some problems. Our rank is low, performance is on decline. Will it be cost effective? We do not have information to comment. Second is, should we refurbish the stadium? We had discussed on this. Our capacity is the lowest amongst the top 8, as well as our facilities are not enough for that, for us to rent it out for other users. So refurbishing the stadium costs a lot, but also there are related future income, which is recurring income. How to treat the women's team? Women's team has been doing really well, even though the audience, even though the popularity is relatively low than the men's team. Women's team has been doing really well. Their performance has been increased drastically last year. Top 3 in the league and won the championship of the domestic cup. We can't completely avoid, we at least have to nurture, because that is one of our segments of women's football team is one of the segments of AT club. So we might obviously have to support them to increase their, in recognition of the increased performance, and we also want them to consistently have their performance done. But you have to decide based on the facts given in the final case, to what extent should we contribute. Finally, they might ask you to comment on the competitive strategy. My goodness, students, always make sure that whatever recommendations you provide, whatever strategies you provide should make sense. So in generic strategy, you would have discussed on cost leadership, differentiation, focus cost leadership, and focus differentiation. So here, just comparing, cost leadership doesn't make any sense. Our focus is just to make money, but our focus is not just to reduce cost. We want to perform. We want to be top of the team. We want to achieve. For this, we have to have unique, better performance. It's all about differentiation. And they can also ask us to comment on the risk of the current situation. We have not won a championship for the last 15 years. What are the possible repercussions? You know the repercussions, right? We discussed the challenges of the industry, risks of the industry. Sponsors might not renew. Okay, sponsors might not renew. Fans might lose interest in AT. Merchandise sales will be affected in the long run. Football stars might not be interested in coming to our club. We'll find it a bit difficult to capture expert coaches. So there are many risks involved, which also can be areas that can be tested. Keep in mind, students, for your final exam task, major points come from your exhibits. Pre-seen just gives you the background information you need, right? So here, even the pre-seen, we captured many areas, many faults, many challenges, risks of AT and the industry. And more facts will be given in the exam in the related exhibit. So you have tasks matched with the exhibit. So it's very easy for you to identify and capture information, but make sure you also understand our current context, which is given in the pre-seen. Right. So this marks the end of the pre-seen. I have basically taken you through the journey of the examiner. The examiner has taken you to understand the situation of AT and the football club industry and environment, and I wish you all the best.